That's what I see.
Now you see.
Far enough away.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting here on November 12th at 5:30 p.m. Mr. Clark, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it is.
Okay. After that, I see we have some citizens signed up, and we've had some additional citizens come in. Everybody will get to speak. First one on the list is Sean Amini. Sure.
Yeah,
come on up.
Hit the mic.
You get about 3 minutes,
During the timing.
and I'll do the timing. That way, Mr. McCaffrey's kind of impatient sometimes.
Yep.
So,
I'm just attending today's meeting representing SC Waukesha because I know there's been some concerns about our usage agreements, and it's on the agenda. And I was just here to give a little bit of history. So, because it's not all the same board members, and I think that our name is kind of being dragged through the dirt a little bit with some of the other youth organizations when it was never our intent when this agreement came into place to take time away from anyone. The intent of this agreement was to take time that was not being used at the facilities and raise the money for the turf fields, because at the time we were approached by the 3 athletic directors that they were stalled in getting the $1.6 million that needed to be raised for the fields. So we came up with an agreement. It took a good 6 months, countless meetings and emails, where we came up with a $500,000 agreement. And with that, there's gym time and there's field time. There's 2 separate agreements. Why they're 2 separate agreements, that's a question that I would have to ask you guys internally. But both of them were agreements that were received from the school district, both that we signed off on, and there was back and forth, and both that the school district signed off on. I'm not aware of who signed off on them, whether it was a school board or another member, but these were agreements that the school district thought were feasible. There's other questions in regards to thinking we're a private organization and not a feeder program. We are the only feeder program for soccer in the Waukesha. There's 400 people in our club that have Waukesha addresses, and that doesn't include the players that are within the district that don't have Waukesha addresses. We don't ask what school they attend. So we have 48 teams that use the gyms. We have 48 teams that use the turf fields. I'd say 75% of them are Waukesha players. We do have other affiliate clubs that are like outside of Waukesha that don't use the fields or use the gym space. I just wanted to clear things up on how this all evolved. I meet with the athletic directors 3 times a year at the 3 high schools to come up with the times for the football fields. Whenever there's discrepancies, we switch times out. This year was the first year that, at the time, Glenn Norder had all the time for gyms put into the athletic calendar with the school district. In the past, it's been done separately. I think that raised some eyes because it looks like we get way more hours than we actually do. What we end up doing is they block off the time, and then anytime there's conflicts with, whether it's Waukesha North having their basketball tournaments, then we give back any time that is a conflict, or whether there's conferences or whether there's other meetings, we're always willing. Whenever we need to trade gyms because it doesn't work out, we've been willing to do that in the past. We've tried to not get in anyone's way and make this agreement as good for both the school district and for Waukesha. I believe for the last 5 years it has been good. I think one of the concerns when we first had it was, would Waukesha live up to their end of the obligation and make their payments was the biggest concern. We've already made our August payment. We made that back in January. So we're ahead on our payments. So for us, it's a little bit concerning that all of a sudden this has become a concern and a problem for others because we've had a good relationship. So it's really catching us off guard. That's all I have.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mike, you're number 2. Your last name, if you could say it, because I can't read the writing, and that's my bad
Now you're
eyes.
picking on my penmanship already. Haven't even started yet. My name is Mike Savacool. I live in the district, pay my taxes here. I'm an active member in the South Booster Club, and my wife and my family volunteer to support our schools. On October 18th, I emailed the board and the superintendent regarding the use fees and facility access. I'd like to thank those of you who did respond to me and were courteous enough. As there's been no change in the policy last night, I'm here tonight to make the case in person. As you listen to me tonight, think of me as representing every parent and child in the district who is being harmed by our current policy. Every football, basketball, baseball player, wrestler, and dancer is both being asked to pay extra to use the facilities that are already paid for through our taxes, but are also being denied access to the facilities that a non-district group can use the facilities. Our football players should not be pushed off the field in season, which happens every week, every year. Our basketball players should not be fighting for time in season and being pushed off times and be moved to lower facilities, which is happening again this year. With spring baseball, all of our schools going to that this year, those players should not be denied time in batting cages and pitching tunnels, so out of season or out of district for-profit use facility can use our facilities, pardon me. Our school affiliated programs should be given first priority, not secondary priority. None of them should be charged a fee to use our facilities. We pay for these facilities and their use through our taxes. These facilities are built and maintained to benefit the public. To charge ourselves extra to use the facilities we've already paid for, I find to be absurd. I've been told these fees are to pay for heating, cooling, lighting, and cleaning. I would hope that we have not mismanaged our current budget so badly that we can't cover our current utilities. If we have budgeted properly, why are we charging these fees? What are they going for? We've been told it would cost $230 for 2 hours for a school-affiliated program to use a facility. I find that amount outrageous and unconscionable. How did we come up with this number? You also know there's many parents in our district that cannot afford these extra fees. We are only making the situation worse and relegating our programs to only parents who can afford it. As somebody who just finished coaching 8th graders, and there was a little more than 20 kids on the 8th grade team, which is a very small number to field teams. You all know that North and South in particular are struggling from a football standpoint. Baseball program at South I know is struggling to get kids out. There were kids in our program as 8th graders that had to get scholarships, which basically meant another parent stepped up so that they could play. I myself had to feed kids before games and after games. To come up and say we're going to charge another $230 so that kids can come in and play basketball or throw in batting cages for something we've already paid our taxes on, I just do not agree with, and I hope we can find a better way. And if we're going to be using our facilities for outside groups, we should at least be charging market rates and not charging ourselves more. I'm asking you to eliminate all facility use fees for our school-affiliated programs. Please direct the administration to give priority to our school-affiliated programs in scheduling and be transparent in this process. Others that I've talked to have mentioned the headaches they get to when they're trying to figure out what facilities are available and when. I know that there's been some new software involved and there's some new systems, and I understand that. But I'm asking for more transparency, more forthrightness, and getting rid of these new fees that have been put on this year.
30 seconds left, Mike.
Yep, I'll finish up. And don't misunderstand me in particular on this. I do not begrudge SC Waukesha any agreement that's in place. I appreciate what they have done. Saying that, I'm looking at everybody being treated equally, but for sure, our school-related programs, there should not be a basketball team, a wrestler, a dancer, anybody else who gets pushed off. The gentleman before me, I believe her name is Sean, mentioned, they go through the calendar and they give back time. To me, that's the key word there. We should not be having to have somebody else give us back our time for our facilities. So please give this the consideration that's due. Think of the extra cost that's involved and why it's there. And anything that we can do to eliminate, I would ask you to do that. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, I believe there's some additional people who signed up tonight. If there is, please come forward, state your name and address, and wait. I guess I got a couple sheets here. Taurus, Piacek, or Teresa? Which? Tom. Guess I should be wearing my glasses. Thomas.
Tom Piasek, there you go.
Thomas.
Not as easy as it looks.
Yeah. I thought I could see it.
Good evening. An MOU, memorandum of understanding, is an agreement between two parties that outlines their requirements and responsibilities. In the MOU for SC Waukesha, the requirement is that the school district makes available thousands of hours of indoor space and grass fields to SC Waukesha for 10 years starting in 2014. SC's Waukesha's requirement is, wait for it, to pay nothing for that space. That's a pretty good deal for them. I'm not sure, given those requirements, how this can even be considered an understanding or a contract. It's just a giveaway. And it's a giveaway not signed by the board or the superintendent. Clearly, this is a bizarre arrangement that needs to be terminated immediately. I'm not sure how the MOU came into place. It's possible there's a conflict of interest in the district office, but the more likely scenario is that SC Waukesha played the struggling nonprofit card and said they needed to generate some extra revenue to help pay for the turf field rental. Looking at their 990 forms that are public, they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars out in salaries every year, so they're not a struggling nonprofit. To be clear, this was a rental agreement, and an agreement at the insanely low rate of $29 per hour for the turf fields, lights included. And trust me, they take full advantage of those fields, those lit fields when daylight saving time ends, as we've all seen recently. It was not a donation, as too many people still refer to it. It was an incredible deal for them. You owe them nothing more. An email in the district office recently said that we got when we got the agreement said, please note this agreement all relates back to the donations made to the school district of Waukesha. That's the attitude in the district, is they're donations. They were not. This is just a great deal and a great contract for them just for the turf fields. A big issue with the district is that they struggle to understand the significant differences between the youth organizations. Ellenbrook, for example, clearly spells out junior Spartans and junior Lancers in their facility policies. And they give them the highest priority access for free. To help with the differences, here's a quick overview of the junior programs. The Junior North Stars basketball program consists of all district kids and is tightly coupled with the North basketball program. Coach Catula is on the North Stars board, sets the direction for the program, helps with coach selection, tryouts, and numerous other things. Coach Laval does the same thing for the West Junior program. We are an all-volunteer organization. Our player fees are low and used to pay for uniforms and league and tournament entries. The money we make from our tournaments and tournament concessions is used to offset the kids who may not be able to afford to play, and they're also used, unfortunately, to pay for facility rental at WCTC, as SC Waukesha has taken a lot of the quality gym at the time at the middle schools. Note that SC Waukesha is not practicing Summit View, Meadowbrook, or Lowell, as those courts are ice rinks, as we call them. So they're not good enough for them, so we get the scraps they don't want. The leftover money in our program from good concession sales is donated to the high school to purchase backboards, shooting guns, and other equipment. We truly are partners of the school district, not opportunists as SC Waukesha seems to be. Contrast our junior programs with that of SC Waukesha. To start with, they have large numbers of non-district kids. They're paying out $500,000 in salaries. The extra money is going to their directors' or coaches' pockets, and now it's going into Rock Ventures. They'll have around 950 sessions in our schools this winter. We roughly estimate maybe they get $100 per session with 10 kids. That's $100,000 they're taking home by renting our district's schools for free. Couple all that with the fact that it's an off-season sport. I know they try to make it in season by calling it futsal, but near as I can tell, the definition of futsal is an activity to generate extra revenue from suburban soccer parents. There's no way that should be prioritized over in-season sports like basketball. If they want to be considered a feeder program, start a low-fee SC Waukesha Junior North program. Then again, a low-fee SC Waukesha Junior North program would never think about taking time from the basketball season in the winter. The Waukesha School District needs to have a reasonable facility policy like every other district. But as long as this MOU exists, it can never happen. The MOU needs to end today. SC Waukesha can figure out what to do next. Their business success should not be your concern. It's time to stop giving priority to a for-profit, off-season business with large numbers of non-district kids. We've been hearing for months the referendum that you're just looking out for the district kids. Tonight you have a chance to prove it.
Okay, thank you very much. Kelly Piacek, you're up next. Piacek.
Hi there, I'm Kelly Piasek, and I'm with the Waukesha North Junior Boys Basketball Program. I would have another 8 coaches joining me tonight on this topic, but they all have practice. They're at WCTC tonight hosting practice, and they know how precious their gym time is, so they won't give it up. This is the 4th year we've held practices at WCTC. We pay over $10,000 a year to rent that gym at over $100 an hour. I understand and hope tonight that this committee is going to have some serious discussion regarding the relationship with the soccer program and also the fees that are charged to us. It's important to me that you understand how these programs are different, but it's also important that you understand what this means to the kids in our district. Our organization provides a service to this district. That service is an affordable, high-value youth basketball program that builds school pride, teamwork, and fitness in over 600 student athletes a year in our district. The little kid who wears this jersey every Saturday and Sunday wants to play basketball for Waukesha North. He's a Waukesha North student. He doesn't want to play for Brookfield or Kettle Moraine or Arrowhead or Elkhorn, Waukesha. Twice a week he goes to practice with his school friends. He learns teamwork, strategy, how to win and lose gracefully, and how to improve himself every day. His parents volunteer at least 10 hours a season to help our program, and his coach, easily over 100. He will bring his parents and his siblings to at least one varsity basketball game this year, and they will definitely buy concessions. He's a North Star. The practice facilities we're asking you to return to our programs are basketball courts. Do you understand how absurd it sounds to say the private soccer club is practicing on the basketball court while the district basketball program is practicing in the lunchroom? Tonight you'll go back and discuss the MOU, and I hope that you'll keep a few things in mind when you do. It seems that the absurdity of this MOU would suggest that somebody knew somebody or was trying to do someone else a favor. And what I would just ask is that if anyone has a conflict of interest, that they would recuse themselves from this discussion and from any decisions related to this. And I would ask that the larger board do the same. The other thing I would say is that our surrounding school districts, our neighboring districts, have figured this out. They respect and support their district youth programs, and they don't look to them as a source of revenue to make up for past mistakes. We can do better than this. We don't need to take this road. We have almost $190 million a year in operating budget. The $50,000 that comes on behalf of the soccer program is not something we should be fighting for. And as we tell our children all the time, it's never too late to do the right thing. Please don't come back here from closed session and tell us that it's too late to correct this issue for this school year, because I have 8 coaches over at WCTC right now who will tell you that it's not too late. As long as this MOU exists, there's really no way to assure that the privileges that SC Waukesha is getting over our Waukesha School District families will ever end. You need to agree to end it. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight on any subject? Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. We'll move on with our agenda for tonight. First action item is the approval of minutes from the October meeting.
I move approval.
I second it.
Okay, do we have discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Approval of vouchers.
There were no voucher questions this month.
Joe?
Am I the only one who ever asks questions, Mr. Chairman?
The most important one. Does anyone
I
have,
had no questions this month.
okay, does anyone else have questions on the vouchers? Do I have a motion?
Move approval of the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. McCaffrey, second by Ms. Ronichek. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Information item, monthly budget report.
Okay, as far as revenues go, October is a fairly low month for looking at any of our revenues. We typically start receiving more money come November, but just a couple things I wanted to point out. In the local revenue, it does look like interest payments are low, but as always, that's because the local government investment pool statement never is produced by the time we're producing this report. Other than that, the larger revenue that we received, we did receive a $229,000 refund, a rebate on our infrastructure project, so that's been in and booked. It's booked under, it shows under refund of prior year expenses, but that's a DPI coding thing that even though it was this year, we have to code it that way. Under expenses, salaries and benefits, right on target with where we expect to be. The early retirement expenses, if you notice, they look very low. That's because we have a couple months we have to go back and book yet for that. So that will be caught up hopefully next month. Purchase services, our biggest expenditures for purchase services in October were tuition to some of our partners, our 4K partner programs, the Montessori school, and some of our special education partners that we work with. There, again, supplies for non-capital objects. This time of year, supplies are usually the biggest, and they still are. Capital objects, again, our biggest expense was finishing up of the infrastructure project, so the final expenditures for that have come through. We had no debt retirement out of Fund 10 in October. Insurance looks really high this month, but it's because we paid 2 quarters in 1 month, so it's a timing issue of how the payments came through. No transfers, dues and fees remain the largest of our others, and overall, we're at 12.59 of our budget spent versus 12.29 last year in regular education. Special education this time of year is pretty slow. Revenue, we won't start seeing much until November. Salaries and benefits are really our big purchases, our big expenditures, and they're pretty much in target with where we're at and where we're at last year and where we expected to be this year. So overall, everything's good. No hiccups or anything to report.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Como?
I know we buy our fuel in bulk for our natural gas, our contracts. When do we review those contracts?
I can tell you, Glenn and I did it once since I've been here, so I guess we're on a pace of every other year we look at that.
I know it was multiple years, but I just couldn't remember when that
And it
was
might even
coming
be a
due.
3-year, I'd have to go back and look at that. It's
Constellation.
yeah, they've had
Energy.
several names over the years, but Constellation is the company I think you're referring to.
Okay. Yeah, just, if you could shoot me an email
Sure.
reminding me when we do that and when that's coming up, I'd appreciate it.
Any other questions? I'm just going to comment a little bit on, we do track, this is every month we have this on our agenda, this and the vouchers, infamous vouchers. And we're usually track extremely close to budget on item after item, and this is no exception. Luckily, over the last 5 years, we've tended to come out at year end with a slight surplus almost every year. Sometimes not so slight, sometimes better than slight. Because of the way we watch our money and the way we, like these monthly budget reports, and the way the administration works very hard to economize, sometimes charging fees, we have developed a fairly good reputation in the district for being fiscally responsible, which we didn't have 10 years ago. And but part of that is having the trust of the public and being able to pass referendums like we just did. And we certainly appreciate the trust the public places in us to maintain our facilities through a facilities referendum like we just had, which we'll be talking about at the next item. But I do think we budget properly. Part of it is, what we charge for, and what we spend on, we spend on. But we have done a much better job than we did 10 years ago, where it seemed like we were always asking for money because we certainly didn't know how to control our spending properly. So we're way ahead with our current administrative team. I can guarantee that. Okay, if no other questions on the monthly budget report or comments?
Really, the best indicator of where we fall from a fiscal perspective is each year we have an audit, an annual audit. And that report will be coming up to our committee soon, next month or the following month. And that is probably the most important independent reporting that we get on how our administrators are doing. And it's our job to make sure that we follow through with the auditors and make sure that they're doing their job too. So we should get a good snapshot of that coming up in the next month or two. Is it 1 month? Yeah,
We're trying for, looking at December, but potentially January, just because of the timing of when the audit is due to DPI and the December meeting. So I'm thinking it's probably going to fall January, but there's potential for it to be.
Yeah, because they're always looking for issues and ways to improve. And as a matter of fact, some of the fees, I believe, many moons ago were looked at as to how are we controlling monies coming into our central office for various activities. So actually, there's been a lot of hard work being put in towards centralizing those fees over the last year or so. So anyways, we'll get a chance to talk on that a lot more tonight.
Okay, thanks for the budget update. We'll go right on to Mr. Clark's favorite subject, referendums. He lives and dies by referendums.
Yeah.
So we'll take this referendum update. I hope you have a positive report on the referendum.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly go over, I've gotten a few questions from citizens that I've developed an email relationship with at this point related to facilities, but also from staff and principals. So an email with the schedule that's on the back of your executive summary is going to be going out to all staff tomorrow. But just so we give you a very broad timeline, next week we will have our first kickoff meeting administratively with our team as we move forward. And we'll spend the bulk of 2019 in the planning phase and then hope to have bid documents out on the street in late 2019, sometime around about now. Then we would go through the vetting process, and then in early 2020, we would award contracts and then be ready for major construction the summer of 2020. Now, there will be standalones, because we also have the safety grant dollars out there, so small standalone projects where you don't need a lot of planning and you don't have to have drawings done and all that. We'll start that sooner, but the major work will not start until the summer of 2020. And then we hope to have, or tentatively scheduled to have, all work done for the 21-22 school year. So there'll be 2 summers of pretty extensive work. But then we'll have it all wrapped up after that. That's where we are right now. So again, the detail starts next week, and we'll be updating the committee on our progress on that front. So, and again, this is also on the website, on the referendum page. We're going to be transitioning from a referendum information page to a facility improvement webpage, so we'll be able to keep the community aware of where we are in the process as well. So that's where if there's any questions on any of that, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mr. Como?
No questions, but, Darren, thank you for the hard work you did. You put in a lot of hours. Joe, Mr. Gray, Dr. Gray put in a ton of hours on this. It was important to get the facts out to our community so that they had good information to vote on. I'd like to thank my fellow board members too. We had a year and a half, 2 years worth of several workshops, I think 9 workshops, leading up to this. And this whole thing really started a number of years ago, where we started to take a much closer look at our facilities and what our needs were. And we had professionals come in and really line item out things that we could work on. And really the process was, what do we need versus what do we want? And I think we really whittled that down to our needs as opposed to just simple wants. So thank you to everyone for the hard work. And the biggest thanks goes to our constituents who informed themselves on what this referendum was all about. I think the media did a good job of getting the word out. And Terry, I know you did a lot of extra work too. And getting the word out and working with our local media professionals. And a big thanks to the constituents who got active on this and learned enough information so that they could make an informed decision, and we appreciate the confidence that you put in us. So thank you to our constituents.
I only have one comment, one concern. I mean, we saw a lot of referendums pass in the area. There's a lot of construction going on. See with Foxconn, which I'm sure will go forward. There's going to be a lot of demand for construction in southeastern Wisconsin, and not only and quite a bit in the school district space alone. So this may not be the normal project in terms of getting it done on time and according to budget, unless we put some extra work into it. I just think that there's such a limited supply and a high demand that if we don't have a little bit more emphasis on than we've had in the past on making sure that we hold what has traditionally been our partners responsible for being on time and within budget and being efficient, I could see where we could get disadvantaged by that. I think a few years back, the Siemens thing, there was the talk about how we needed a project manager, and we never really got one. We did end up getting the state to help us with some of it, but the reality is I felt like we got taken advantage of a little bit by Siemens because we didn't have someone watching them. And I know that traditionally a lot of school districts trust their suppliers, but I've learned time and time again, trust is not working too well for school districts. You end up sometimes a good way to generate a high profit for somebody because you're trusting them a little bit too much. So I think the administration should take a hard look at whether, given the circumstances and the fact that when taxpayers agree to allow their taxes to be raised, no tax increase is small, especially for someone struggling, that we work very, very hard to make sure that their money gets spent efficiently and wisely. More so than maybe we've ever done before. Because there's going to be a time in the future where we're going to have to go back to them again. Not any time soon, I hope, but there will be a time. So. Okay, any other comments from anyone? Well, now we'll go to the discussion item. School District of Waukesha facility rental.
Yeah, we, Jess Tinker's here from my office, and she's the contact person and the lead person on facility use. And again, we brought it all centrally with the new software. So we had planned on reporting out our progress on this front in January or February, but with the topic with facility usage kind of coming to the forefront, I thought I'd move it up and tell you where we are today and provide you some background to, I think, us or me spurring some of the conversation we have. And that was with the rollout of our school software and scheduling options. So just to, again, trying to provide a framework so when we talk about the MOU and everything else in greater detail, you'll have some background. Prior to our school, we had a very paper-intensive facility use system, and it really didn't allow us to very easily add up how many hours does the Junior North Stars or Wolverines or whoever have. Our custodians weren't easily able to look up now, and they can look up on one computer and pull up one calendar and see all the activities in their facilities. Especially for sub situations, it's the same way to look it up in every building. They know exactly that process to help us set up and prepare for facility use. So we thought there was a lot of advantage with that. Our school was chosen because our ADs through the Classic 8 conference used our school for their scheduling of all their activities conference-wise. So we thought it would be an easy transition to go forward. And we thought after some study it was a pretty viable resource. with that transparency did raise some questions, and I wish I would have known more of the history of some of the agreements we've had. Maybe we could have skipped this, but at the time, I took the approach that SC Waukesha, we had a contractual obligation. The suggestion was made to me, and I did approve. Why don't we get them on the calendar first, because we have this obligation to them, right? Or this agreement with them. And I thought that made a lot of sense. It seemed very reasonable to me. Now, in hindsight, I don't know if that made a whole lot of sense or if that was the right call, but it was it truly was made in a gesture of making it as easy and as transparent for people to see exactly what was out there. Plus for our office, or my office, to know what was out there, because we'd really never had a tool to measure facility usage very accurately with. So now we have the tool, the process is in place, and like any improvement process, we're to the point where we need to decide where do we want to take the facility use policy. I've worked in a couple of districts around the metro area over my career. They all struggle with facility use. There's always words like fairness and equity that we all think we understand, but in a room full of 20 people, there's probably 20 different definitions of what those terms are.
So Darren, I think one of the things we should be a little bit careful about is not mixing the two. We're talking about facility rental, okay? Facility use has other connotations, and so does agreement. So when we keep to the discussion item, at this point, if we can focus on facility rental
Sure.
as much as possible. And
So my point is, we are at the point, and unfortunately it came up in a larger conversation, but we need to analyze how do we want to handle our facility use? How do we want to measure and provide a framework that allows not only the large users and the small users, but also the frequent and infrequent users opportunity to use our facilities? And that gets into, it's more difficult and complex than you think it should be. But ultimately, the board needs to define the framework that we're going to put into our school and utilize going forward. Even terms like affiliated, sometimes affiliated can be very clear. Junior North Stars, the coaches on the board, a very solid structure. But oftentimes you have groups that'll tear off and form their own basketball team. Their kids will go to North or West or South. Are they affiliated or not? So there's some work that we need to do, and we think we can accomplish that over the next couple of months. We've provided you with, on page 6 of the packet, just a brief history of where we were and where we are today. And again, I do think we've made some progress in terms of managing facility use or facility rental. We also need to come up with a fee structure, and we think we're there, that fits into our school, that would allow groups to actually know what they're going to pay on the front end of the transaction rather than getting a bill sometimes later, and not being on the same page in terms of custodial charges and other costs that you might get. So we're here to answer any questions you might have on the direction we're going in terms of general facility use or rental, whatever term you want to use, that might help us move forward. And again, I think this is an item that sounds like it'll come back to you, and it would have anyways, regardless of our next conversation and agenda item. So I just want to provide, again, some background, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
well, I'll start with just a little bit of, I normally let the other committee members, but I just want to start in talking about the rental and focusing on the rental. When we look at groups that are district associated and district focused, which is in group 1, let's just say group 1 as a descriptor on page 7. And then you have group 2, which is nonprofit use or organizations not affiliated with the district as group 2. And they're not the same, but yet we're treating them the same. So from a facility rental fee point of view, I don't consider a nonprofit the same as a all-volunteer support organization. And especially when it's not necessarily focused on our district community. So I would not necessarily feel comfortable that they should be treated the same. There's probably a little bit different distinction there, and when you have group one and group two pretty much the same all the way down, it's I don't think that's really the way I would want to go with it. Mr. Como?
I'm trying to understand what that difference might be. So like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, a group two might be like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts.
That could be a group one in our district.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So give me an example of what would be a group two then.
How-
How are they not affiliated with the district?
Right.
That's one of the questions. So what, I mentioned, what is affiliated? Now, we can, the one where the coach is on the board and that, I think you can maybe draw, but what about a group of Waukesha kids who form their own basketball team
They're affiliated with the district.
that they could go out and do in tournaments and call themselves the senior Wolverine, or, you know, there's no control. Are they affiliated or are they not affiliated? Where do we draw that line?
So the junior black shirts, the junior North Stars, and what's West? Wolverines?
You know,
Greens.
Junior Wolverines. Those are all feeder programs that the money that they make is a pot. And it, from what I understand, and it's the varsity, JV, it's all of that is in the same pot. So that's what I was told, because that money goes towards buying shoes for the seniors so that they all match. That money is a whole pot.
Is that the case? Are we
I think,
mingling money
if
with
I
the
could, I
junior
think a better
programs?
way to define it are those clubs that have a connection to the high school teams or the high school coaches and so on. My experience with my prior two districts are most of the feeder teams that were connected to one of our high school coaches would have fallen in group one. And as a dad who had three boys that went through feeder programs, there was a tremendous amount of connection to those particular schools. There were other programs that did not necessarily have that same connection, which did use the facilities, but there was a clear distinction on who was what I would call an affiliated club or group. I mean, I know our high school coaches are all involved with the particular clubs that I think that are represented here tonight, but there's other areas too. For example, FFA, you know, they're it's a group of our students. You know, we would I'm assuming we would put them in group one, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. There's others too, but I think anyone that has that direct connection to our athletic programs would be considered group one. Again, that's just my experience from other districts.
In between the two, if you go down the fee, fee-wise, there's little or no difference between group one
That's
and
the
group two.
problem, Mr. Clark. You're treating them the same, and they're not the same. And even group one, which I would categorize anyone that's affiliated with the district, high school, middle school, elementary schools in group one, and as an affiliation being, if it's our kids in our community, you know, that our taxpayers, and I can even say if they're from Trinity or Catholic Memorial or whatever, they're our taxpayers, right, for the most part, those people. They're group one type citizens. They're paying taxes, right, for those children. And then In addition, there's children there that have income needs that need support. We know that. We see it at the high school, in the high school sports, and that's why some kids don't get involved, because, you know, they don't want to come in and beg to be poor. You know, they want to be involved, but they don't want to be singled out as being poor. I think the group one's a pretty broad group of people, but it's not group two, right? Group two has the distinction of being a nonprofit youth organization not affiliated with the district. Well, to say that these elementary, middle school, and high school teams aren't affiliated with the district, I can't get that. And Mr. Gray, you're saying that you would put them in group one, but yet in functionality, apparently,
I'm just
they were
throwing that out
suggesting that
there.
it should be in group two, and
Yeah, I
I
think-
can't see it in group two at all.
Yeah. No, I, again, my experience is they would normally be in a group one. They don't typically have, again, the schools that my boys went to, which was a feeder into Oshkosh West, typically didn't have the kind of funding that a group two or group three would have to cover some of these things. So it just seemed to make more sense. Like I said, a lot of those kids practiced literally in the same school they went to, which even made a bigger connection to the program. So again, that would be just my recommendation, is that those clubs, which again, and not only do they, you know, are they part of our district, but typically they do raise funds to help out our facilities. I know the football feeder clubs helped out with some of the turf fields. I know the basketball clubs have helped out with different things that improve our facilities. I'm aware of one club that is looking at potentially fundraising to help put a better floor in one of our, I think it's an elementary. I have to go back and look at my notes. So to me, that's the kind of organization that, you know, would normally be in a group one.
As a parent of a junior North Star and a junior Wolverine going through the programs for basketball, yeah, they're definitely directly connected to the schools. Yeah, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be a group one in that context. And yes, indeed, we did have fundraisers, and a lot of that would go towards for improvement of facilities, you know, along with uniforms and things like that. Yes, I really definitely think that they fit in the group one category.
Check.
Yeah, so about that pot, so whether it was us, the junior black shirts, or North Stars, or Wolverines having a concession stand, that money went in there. The varsity or JV, that money went in there. It was a check we had to write at the beginning of the year that then went into the pot. As far as athletic fees for the high schoolers, I'm not sure if those were designated in the pot, but it all went to one place. So if a junior or a senior needed a scholarship, that money went to help them. Shoes, uniforms, whatever it was, that was one pot. So how can that not be a district-sponsored activity? I think about the Park and Rec that uses our facilities after school for watching kids. I don't think they come past, they're not allowed to use the gym and such past 6, are they? 'Cause
No.
parents need to come get the kids.
Right.
So they're not a problem, correct? Because we don't hold any practices before 6?
I don't know how when the clubs schedule theirs, but typically, you'd have to ask the different clubs when they schedule.
And I know, go ahead. Okay, would they hold practices any sooner for kids? Would that be too hard to get parents to coach, or to get kids to practice? Would we want to hold a practice at 5? So that. So that B, or that group 2 is then taking the time from group 1. Okay. So those agreements, so the city park and rec and the YMCA and the youth activities falls under group 2. Okay. I know, I'm just saying, I'm trying to get,
Help the district provide a service to
okay, but if we're going to create a chart that actually will work for us, right now, those city parks and rec fall under group 2 unless we say it's something else, after school care or whatever. I just have another question. When was it said that the groups needed to pay more? When was it said? I remember reaching out to you guys because I heard a rumor and I needed to come back with somebody and tell them, but they asked me, why are the junior programs being charged more? And you guys said, no, they're not. And so I was thankful, and I'm like, no, we're not charging more. There's always been the same fee, but now we keep hearing that they're being asked to pay more. Why? It's, okay, it's the only,
In March, we did send out a letter to all the junior basketball teams telling them that we would no longer use the site directors, which in the past has allowed them to avoid custodial charges on the weekends, but that provided a liability issue, also the cleanliness issue of the facilities. So that, I believe, is where the extra fee conversation is coming from. It's for Saturday and Sunday usage,
After 1.
after 1 on Saturdays. The elementaries on the weekends.
And I think the big problem with that is you've had, for years, we've had a situation where they've been able to use the gyms pretty much at no cost. And then this year, I think it's that last line. I think probably the big problem is the rate. I mean, that's certainly an issue. But that was a surprise is that, we have the system that probably tracks more hours for one. And then second of all, you have new rates, which were not ever used because either the tracking system wasn't in place or maybe they were less. But I mean, I think the rate, and this is something I've talked to Darren about too, is maybe we need to look at how we charge, what we charge, because I think some of the rates were pretty steep. I don't know that we pay anyone those rates for overtime.
Well,
So again, I think it's not, it doesn't even necessarily go to the group 1, 2, or 3 argument. It's those rates for the weekend that I think are causing the biggest problem. And when I've talked to some of the teams, I mean, it's the charges are pretty healthy going from 0 to those levels.
when you mentioned site directors, or you're not using site directors, were these people that were put in charge to clean up, make sure everything was back in place and orderly before the event was ended?
My understanding was the site director was someone who was tied to the district, whether it was a parent employee or whatever, who took the responsibility to make sure that everything ran properly, had the contact information and all those things, and typically volunteered their time. That was my understanding. And I'm guessing the teams itself, whoever used it, were responsible for cleaning up after they were done. I can't speak to how that worked, but I don't know that there were issues up until.
It was a process with mixed results.
Mr. Como?
Yeah, I can see why we moved away from site directors. When my kids were in school, I wasn't an official site director, but I was someone who helped the site director. And I'll just give you the example of band. There's March Fest held up at Waukesha South every year for many years. And there was going to be a fee charged for the cleanup. And it's a pretty big mess after you have everyone fill the stands up at the stadium at Waukesha South and have a good time. So there were a number of us parents who volunteered that we would, go out and clean up so that we wouldn't have to pay the fees to the custodians to do that. And it did break down, that we didn't necessarily know where all the equipment was and what we had to do. And actually, we did kind of a poor job. And we didn't feel good about it, but we were trying to help, the group save money. I'm glad that we're moving away from the site directors because I just don't think it works. Going back a number of years, I don't even remember exactly how many years, 5 or 6 or 7 years maybe, we had some general discussions on custodial fees and on the weekends, and we had issues with scheduling our custodians on the weekends. First of all, finding people to go into our facilities to keep them clean, and we're finding that, it did cost us a lot of money to do that, and I think that's where the fees started a number of years ago. I don't even remember the exact time of that. I don't think it was discussed at the board level. It was just something that was handled administratively, and it seemed to be handled best at each individual sites. But I think that that's where perhaps maybe some of the schedules started to get put together as some of the documentation. I don't know, did you guys put this together, or was this in existence?
We mirrored our existing
Which
fee
is on the
structure.
last page.
Okay.
Last page has the prior fee structure.
It's one of the versions, so we mirrored it off of the groups and really you try to make it as simple as possible and stay as consistent as possible, but we're also trying to fit it into a software package so we can do billing in the front end, so you couldn't do it seamlessly.
So I guess the point I want to make here is I do believe we need professionals doing the cleanup and not volunteers doing the cleanup. The volunteers thing just doesn't work well, in my opinion.
So looking back historically, and, we had a thing called a community service levy. The community service levy, and we still can do it. I mean, we still do a portion of it, was meant to cover so we didn't charge fees for all these various groups in our community. That's the way it was created. That's why it was created by the legislature and why it was asked for by school districts across the state, because a lot of school districts across the state at the time used their facilities way more for the parks and recs and things like that than even Waukesha did at the time. So it seems to me like we've reverted to, there's a lot of this cost associated with having people on our facilities. Let's charge them for it. And that, to me, is why the community service levy was created, was to cover those costs so you could spread it across the entire community, because the entire community benefits from our kids being in programs, right?
Absolutely.
Not just those kids, not just those parents, the entire community. So when we make, I know some people, some taxpayers would say, well, make the people who use the facilities pay for them. I know that's kind of the mindset, but that's not the general mindset that we had in the past when we agreed to use the community service levy because we were providing these kinds of services to our community. So I can understand why we're charging now, but it's because we kind of walked away from the community service levy as being in support of these facilities, when in reality, we probably should never have walked away from that.
I think demand's gone up too. I mean, 20 years ago, you didn't have our schools open on Sunday at all, you know? A combination of those.
Ms. Ryanchuk?
Thank you. Darren, how did the old fee schedule categorize these feeder programs? What group were they in this 2015
They've always
schedule?
been a group two.
They've always been in group 2.
And I don't think that is really the issue, because if you look at the last line, it's the issue at hand here, the big charges are not group specific. It's all the same across the board. So I don't think that is the issue as much as just those weekend charges. I could be wrong. I don't know if there's other charges, but my guess is going from very little to where they're at right now is probably due to that weekend charge. Because you get 10 teams practicing on a weekend, that's going to could run you a couple $1,000, depending on when the practice times are. And I don't know, what's the Sunday after 1?
Sunday all day.
Okay, Saturday?
After 1 on Saturday, yeah.
So then what were our swim and soccer clubs grouped as, 1 or 2?
Well, Express has a different lease agreement with the district, just like SC Waukesha, the same structure. Not the details, but how we went about doing it. The other groups, you asked me about swim and
Soccer, SC soccer.
both have agreements, separate agreements.
So they're categorized as group 1 or group 2?
They're not on this chart because they have separate agreements with us directly.
And let's be clear, I mean, I don't really want to get into the specific agreements, but we have a club organization that helps us support the running of a pool that was built in a manner that it needed a club organization to help us utilize that pool fully to the benefit of the district. That's why the Express, which has always been a community organization here in Waukesha, stepped forward and offered to sign on the agreement for the pool. And in addition, the Express, when we needed coaches for West, they stepped up and provided us with a coach for the time being when we were short on coaches. So Express, even though some people may debate because people get paid there, they're more entrenched in our community as an organization to where they're almost a district-affiliated group because of the nature they're really locked into serving the kids in our community. Yeah, we have joint programs with Catholic Memorial and McWanago and Kettle Moraine, but that's not Express that does that. So they're unique in the fact that they have a paid staff person, but they basically serve our community and our schools. Mr. Como.
Well, how much money are we talking that we collect, and how? I have no sense of how busy these facilities are. I mean, I drive by and I see a lot of activity. I live close to South. That's a really active site, so it's like there's people there all the time.
The high schools are 365, 18 hours a day. I mean, it's heavy usage. How many hours did we? No, how many? Remember, we ran just how many hours we had booked just for the winter season. It was like 33,000 hours booked at our sites just during what I would call the basketball season. Does that answer? I mean, it's a lot of usage. In terms
That
of
include varsity and
That was, all groups.
our varsity and JV too? I was gonna say, yeah, that's a lot of.
But in terms of the financial impact, we've never been good at billing. I can't tell you what the financial impact is. We have no records to provide that. We will have records to provide that, but
And
in
it's
terms of
primarily because
financial, I
it was a
don't know.
decentralized process, paper process.
Paper process.
Each school was responsible for that, and eventually those monies would get passed up to the district.
Yeah, they
And
would
now
come-
we're trying to get a control of that. We're trying to put a system in place where we can be transparent, we can see what hours are available,
Right.
and we can do a proper job of collecting. So we don't have a sense of what percentage of the fees, well, we don't know what fees we're getting right now, what we're really generating, and what's coming. I was going to ask about the breakout between weekend and weekdays and different kinds of organizations, so we really can't even get that data.
During the week, the difference is we have second shift custodians scheduled at the schools, so the whole billing for the weekdays is completely different. This is really a weekend issue in terms of the billing for the outside groups.
So I understand, for the interested parties that are here tonight, they probably enjoy watching us discuss this, and maybe we probably have some of the facts twisted around, so it's probably annoying them too. In a way, I feel we're getting the cart before the horse. I mean, it's nice to have this discussion a little bit in public. I don't know how deeply we want to go into this until we actually get an understanding about how we're going to use our facilities. Facility rental is different than facility use. And until we get a better, clearer picture of how our facilities are going to be used, in what way, by whom, it's a little hard to define what we should be doing from a facility rental point of view. Would you agree with that, Mr. Clark?
More data is always better.
Mr. Como?
And I think we either make our facilities available or we don't. I mean, we can't be trying to play towards one group or another group, actually, in terms of, I think there's some prioritization that we can have as far as the groups go, but it's like we either open our facilities up or we don't open our facilities up.
Well, we have, the federal equal access law says if you open it to some groups, you got to open it to all groups. So, that would preclude us from not letting anyone in, and I don't think that's at all what
Right.
we want to do.
I'm not proposing that we
Yeah,
want to do that,
right,
but-
yeah.
like
So
I
I think
said-
it would have to be open to,
Yeah, I want to be careful about talking about use when we're talking about rental.
no, I understand. I
Yeah,
understand.
you
Yeah,
want to kind of
yeah,
decouple
yeah.
the two, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we got a use issue and we have a rental issue, and they're a little bit connected. What I will say is I think the new system that was put in place was a good idea, because it created a transparency, it brought a use issue to our attention and that we didn't have before, and it brought a cost issue to our attention that we didn't have before. So I don't want anyone to blame our administration for doing something that really should have been done and has been done, which is a scheduling system that, you don't see how things are impacting people until it actually gets so visual to them. And we just didn't see it. And that's nobody's fault, but with this new system, we've been able to get feedback from the community and from the administration. And so I compliment, even though it may be frustrating because of the angst that came from this, I think it was a very good idea to have this, so.
But I think the bottom line is we got to find a way to make it affordable for all these groups. I mean, that's,
Well,
and maybe that's something that administration works on, but I think, again, it has to be affordable. And maybe that's using Fund 80 in some format, I don't know, but,
well, it has to be affordable and accessible, because if a
Yeah.
group has to go outside because we don't have access,
yeah, yeah.
it's not affordable.
Yeah, well, and
So-
I don't want, I mean, we're not talking about use, I'm just saying, when we are open, when we do have availability, hopefully we can make it affordable for some of these groups, especially the group ones that probably don't have any kind of profit or whatever motive that, basically they're, again, I hate to go back to my experience because that was many, many years ago, but as parents, we were charged basically enough just to get by, and, there were some use fees, very minimal, but, travel fees, uniforms and that kind of stuff, and that was it. But irregardless, I know that we can't always ignore the costs that we have and the expenses, but I'm hoping we find something that makes it affordable for these smaller groups to come in and use it.
Mr. Como?
Darren, have you actually reached out to other districts and asked them what they do? Have you asked for their fee schedules or if they charge fees? And, I know when we do studies like this, a lot of times we'll want to do comparison to at least the local or the nearby communities, other school districts.
We have reached out, and it's all over the place. I mean, I can tell you McGuanago's current policy looks a lot like Waukesha's old one, because I brought that one to McGuanago because I thought it was a pretty good policy at the time. There's a lot of that in facility use.
It's aged now. It's dated.
There's a lot of sharing of the framework, but every district goes in and then customizes it based on their individual needs. But I don't think we're, like during the week, we're not charging any custodial time because we have second shift custodians. There's districts that still charge a room rate or a gym rate during that time, but it's all kind of.
Saturday up till 1 we don't charge, right? Because we have them on staff.
I can, in the districts I've been in, I've always charged on the weekends because of the custodial costs. But they're all different, but they're all within a range, a pretty narrow range of each other. It is apples and
As we
oranges.
talk about that, it would be nice, I'm assuming.
We have,
we'll give the charge to administration.
we have
move
some of that
forward on
data.
this. Be nice to know that over time as you move forward on this.
What I will say about that, though, is, we're in a different socioeconomic strata than a lot of people in Waukesha County. We got a lot of kids that can't afford shoes or coats. We're not Elmbrook. We're not McGuanago, and we're not Muskego, and we're not Kettle Moraine.
Right.
We have kids that should be in a sport, should be part of our community, should be engaged, and we don't want to freeze them out. So it's nice to go ahead and look at everybody around us, but let's go. I mean, I can tell you, I grew up on an Indian reservation. There's a bar of soap and a $10 activity fee. That's all I paid. So I have a hard time when I hear all these fees and charges. And I understand the district has to recover their costs, and we got expenses and all that. But if you're looking at a poor kid, I don't like to see them have to feel like they have to be singled out for attention when they should be just like every other kid in the district. So
I think more for the audience, because they probably don't know the work we've been doing, but I think we should keep in mind what we've done with fees in general in the district. Over the last 2 years, we've eliminated all course fees at the middle school and high school.
Correction.
Oh,
Almost all fees. at the high school.
AP at the high school still, but so we're methodically going through this, and that is an underlying theme that I know, I can't remember the specific meeting, but it came up at this committee about creating more accessibility to what we offer. And at that time, we were saying we as a district, but now I think we're branching that out to, the activities that are out there that are with supportive groups. So, but we're willing to come back. We'll come back either in December or January with some feedback we got from tonight and keep working on it.
wait,
I have a couple questions about custodial fees. On the old chart, there's an SA custodial and an SU custodial at the very bottom line.
Saturday and
Saturday and Sunday.
That's Saturday and Sunday,
Yeah.
okay? So Saturday and Sunday.
Time and a half and double time, I think, was the differentiator.
Okay. Just to think outside the box, custodial fees is the big thing that the March change is affecting. Because when I had the Junior North Star, Junior Wolverine, we were under the opportunity to have a site director, having a staff person who was willing to vouch for cleaning up before you went home. And we could keep the fees down because of that. We had most of our games on Sunday afternoon, and it worked out really well. Are there opportunities for parents who are willing to help to maybe be hired to be the custodial people in a kind of a, situation that the groups that are doing it, and again, I'm thinking that how many hours I spent at concession stands and things like that through the Junior North Star, Junior program, that there's a way to make this maybe not so subject to the Saturday, Sunday traditional expensive custodians, hire some people that are maybe not at time and a half and double time, but willing to just work as custodians at a more regular rate. I think just thinking outside the box in terms
I
of
think
fees
there's a
here.
number of things, and I mean, I've got different ideas. I'm not going to share them all tonight because we probably want to get home before midnight. But I think there's some things that we probably can do that would help, mitigate some of those costs, yet not incur large expense for the district as well.
We're actually, and I didn't want to expand our ideas that we're rolling out there, looking at hiring a Saturday, Sunday custodian to come in. Now, you also have to find someone who wants to give up 10 hours on a Saturday and a Sunday, weekend after week. I mean, so it's not an easy, it's kind of like finding a bus driver. There's people willing to do it, but it's not easy to find someone who wants that kind of shift. But we are looking to do that, and we have on our list to revisit these custodial rates. These are the rates that have been in place, and I think it is time to go back and take a second look. So,
Ms. Ryanchek?
Just one more idea. We also have all the kids in the Health Academy and other academies that need volunteering time. I know my daughter needed 100 hours. So if there's any high school kids that may be in sports that want to help out these junior clubs, they could do that too.
it's what you're asking that person to do, though. It's the emergency response, it's the alarm that goes off, it's not just,
Unclogging a toilet, restocking facilities.
Finding the toilet
Not
paper.
just cleaning up after.
probably for 80% of the things that go on in our schools, having just a person there is probably fine, but in the, for like the heavy usage where you have big tournaments, and these groups I'm sure have big tournaments all the time, just keeping the bathrooms up to pace is more than what I would ask a high school kid to do.
That'd be some good life skills for these kids.
Could make that argument. So,
That's how you got to be superintendent? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Gray?
Life skills.
God's worked his way up.
Well, it's important that we keep rental separate from use, because that's a different discussion, and so it's okay if this being a discussion item, and that's fine, but they're two different issues, so. Okay,
So this will,
go ahead,
so
Mr.
this will be brought back before us because we talk about all of our fee schedules. I think we need to have our fee schedules completed by April, is it?
we should do it in spring in time for the registration booklets, the communications for the parents for the following year.
Or this
So we
is-
do it in March or April.
Well, we may even do it before then. I mean, we got to resolve some things first, and, if we really feel that it's wrong tomorrow, maybe it's wrong today, so who knows? It could be done sooner. It's up to the committee and the board, but it's up to administration to kind of advise us as to these rental issues. But it's not that we were wrong to charge, it's maybe there's a better way. Okay. Any other business recommendations for future committee meetings? Other than getting the facility rental rates settled, I think that should be done sooner rather than later myself, but.
I had emailed Kurt and Joe about the actuarial study. We have both the audit coming back in December or January. The actuarial study has been, that's the calculation of our retirement obligations. Do you want that to come back here? It is built into our financial statements, so the numbers that are generated from the study, I just don't know what the practice was, or if there's a huge interest. I'd hate to have you listen to both of them in the same night, but I'm willing to do that. It'll be not the most exciting topics, but.
Go ahead.
I mean, traditionally, we've had that information presented to the compensation committee when we had purely a compensation committee, and that was really where we went over that information.
Okay.
It'd come up during our audit, but just briefly, obviously, as that line item. So we've never really concentrated on that amount as a specific topic here at this particular.
Might want to kick it off to HR committee. That's an overstaffed committee anyway. Too many. The other thing is, I guess I'll ask Mr. Gray for clarification. The marketing effectiveness or the internet effectiveness,
I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm guessing fairly soon we should have that.
okay, so if we have that before the next meeting, maybe.
Okay.
I assume the committee would like to.
Yep.
Chief?
Yeah, Chief would like to know what our e-footprint is or whatever it is, how effective we've been, because that's what they're studying, right? The effectiveness of our webpage and all that
Our
stuff.
conversion rate.
Yeah. So we have an outside firm out of Milwaukee taking a look at that for us. Okay, I guess that's it. We'll adjourn. I'm looking for a motion for adjourning into closed session. Mr. Como?
I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent G, to confer with the district's legal counsel who is rendering an oral or written advice concerning a strategy to be adopted by the district with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, specifically on the use of district facilities.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? Motion by Mr. Como, second by Mr. McCaffrey.
Roll call.
Roll call vote.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Mr. Como?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Voigt?
Aye.
Ms. Reinacek?
Aye.
Just so the audience knows, this could be 45 minutes to an hour. We don't know how long this could take. We don't know what the subjects are. I mean, we do know what the subjects are, we don't know what depth we're going to go into, so. Okay?
We may